A moment of significant change or a turning point, altering your course, is known as an inflection point. In business, these moments have a significant impact in many ways. That's why we're speaking with leaders from across the asset management industry to hear the stories of their inflection points and the impact they've had on their journeys. Join me and my colleague Mark Spina as we explore the business of being in business, with insights that can help you wherever you may find yourself. This is Inflection Points.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Spina, President and COO at FLX Networks. I'm also the co-host of InFLXtion Points. I'm joined today by Michael and Eric, partners, founders, leaders at Focus Partners. It's been great to get to know Michael and Eric over the last year. We're starting to work together. They've got a great background, a great story. Most importantly, they're doing energetic and interesting work helping advisors grow their business. I'm going to cut my intro short today and turn it over to Michael to introduce himself and Eric in more detail. Michael, over to you.
Good. Mark, thanks so much to you and the Flex team for having us. Very excited about our ongoing work together. Quick funny story. At one point, Eric and I were doing a lot of work with one company and they kept saying Michael and Eric. And at one point they just said Merrick and they just combined us. And for years with this one group, we are just Merrick. Best friends and business partners. So yeah, we give you a poetic license there. But again, thanks for the opportunity. Eric and I have an interesting story. We come from the industry. So we've spent our whole careers, mine for 29 years, Eric's for 32 respectively. I started out right out of college in the investment world. I worked at a muni bond firm, worked in the wirehouse world, then a regional firm. And I said at a certain point, I want to stay in the industry, but do something different. And they say sometimes things happen for a reason. I used to have a business coach. And one day after a bad week, I got a brochure from NYU about an executive coaching program. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to make the jump here. So I sold my practice, went to NYU. Now, for Eric's background, so I come from the desk. Eric started in banking and commodities, two kind of different areas, but still within financial services. And when we met, which is a good story, he was actually running global training, marketing, and communications for a big four accounting firm. So a lot of background when you pair us together came well together. But how we met's a good story. Our daughters, who are now currently juniors in college and 21 years old, were 3 years old and in nursery school. And at that age, they want to have play dates. So they said to the moms, hey, we'd like to get together. And the wives said, hey, I think you guys might like each other. And like many businesses, we met, we became fast friends and business partners and launched Focus Partners in 2006 in the basement of Eric's apartment at the time. So we've come a long way and I'm very proud of
Yes, we have.
I feel like we just did the show in 3 minutes. Like,
yeah,
you guys are good at this. Should we wrap it there?
Yeah, thanks. Nice seeing you today.
So many interesting threads, and let's pull out a few of them here. You hit on something. I'd like to start off the dialogue, if you will, with some of your formative inflection points. So I'm going to ask you to rewind prior to the muni experience, prior to the commodities experience. Was there something as you're growing, think about as you're growing up, that pointed you towards the space you're in now? We talk to a lot of people, bring in concept of friends, family, some sort of experience in schooling and outdoor adventure. Any of those strike a chord with either of you guys?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. I think for me, I'm the product of environment. My father's a retired principal. My mom's a retired teacher. Growing up, I've always been in this environment of teaching people, helping people, which of course made me absolutely not want to go into teaching and helping people because that's how life works, right? So of course I went in a completely opposite direction. But I found that even when working in banking and working in that environment, I always seemed to gravitate back toward helping people and doing what I can for people. And even in my signature line in email, people to get emails from me, my signature line is pretty interesting. It's the happiest people don't have the best of everything. They don't have the best of everything. They make the best of everything.
I love that.
And I think that's what I started to embody, that I want to be working with people. Don't want to be teaching people per se, but I want to be involved in people's lives. And I want to do everything I can to get people from point A to point Z in whatever fashion that takes with whatever they happen to have. So for me, I think it started by being raised by teachers, realizing you don't want to teach people, but then what did you know it, coming back to a place where you're actually helping and teaching people in some fashion.
That's great. Is outstanding.
That's Yeah. And mine, Mark, is one of being an entrepreneur at heart. Being an FA for all those years, Eric and I jumped off the ledge and started a business as a second career. In middle school, if you remember, everyone had cassettes in the 80s. And then they had double tape decks, and you could dub cassettes. I would buy a box of 10 tapes for $1 each. And I wrote down every cassette I had in the notebook, and I would show it to kids in class, and they'd pay me $5 for a tape. So I started a little business dubbing cassettes, and I hope there aren't any copyright issues there from 30, 40 years ago. And then as a job over the summers in college, I would seal driveways. It was probably not good for anyone's back, but I went door to door knocking on doors, which is not an easy thing to do. So part of my upbringing was my own, I guess I'd call it the entrepreneurial spirit to start something. And that's why Eric and I kind of work so well together, because we have similar yet different backgrounds, and it's a great partnership that works. And we take that to all the advisory firms and practices that we coach and consult to on a daily basis.
I'll actually give one more. So Michael was talking about how the wives met, but he left out a very critical, I think, inflection point here, especially for me. I'm a hermit in a way, right? I have friends. I like talking to people. I'm very social. I network.
See that, Eric. You're going to have to convince me.
It's true. So when my wife told me she met this wonderful woman, Leslie, and he's got a great husband, I'm like, I don't need to meet another guy, whatever. But we finally got to a point where we're like, you know what? Let's go out and play golf. And Michael knows the story that I'm probably referring to here. I belonged to a club with my family, and I said to Michael, hey, let's play golf. We'll get to know each other, whatever. I usually never took people to the club as guests because I had a really bad experience. A year prior, I had taken somebody to the club, and basically very callous, didn't care about a lot, ended up on the signature hole taking a banana peel and threw the banana peel into the lake, the signature hole of the course, which mortified all of us. So I told Michael this story prior to picking him up to play golf. So
this is suspenseful. I don't know.
Yep. So wouldn't you know it, Michael, just to show you how he thinks, when he got in the car, we met for the first time, he handed me a bagel and a banana. And to me, that said, wow, here's a guy who listens, right? He listened to my story. He took it to heart, gave me the banana instead of throwing it into the lake. And to me, that was a turning point for me, because I'd always wanted to do something with somebody, but it's finding that right person to do something with. And with that banana story, that kind of ingrained immediately said to me, hey, here's a guy who gets it, right? He heard my story. He heard what I had said, and he took it to heart, and he threw a little bit of humor in there too. So I thought,
what you forgot, the guy that ate the banana brought food for himself, but not for you. That's why I brought you food.
That's right. Very good point.
That's the kicker.
So I enjoy doing these shows so much, right? Because you have a business relationship with people. We've initiated a business relationship over the last year. So you get to know people during conversation, but you learn so much more about them in conversations like this. So what I take from this opening segment are three things that now are clear to me when I see your business. You've got teaching, you've got coaching, and you've got caring. And I'm going to add a fourth. You've got this entrepreneurial drive to do it yourselves. All right. So it's cool. Let's keep going then. Let's go on to the professional realm. What were some of the precursor, I think of them as, inflection points moving ahead in your lives that you've experienced over the years? Colleagues, mentors. I typically ask about professional development and training. This is, you guys are doing it yourselves, but network, previous jobs, roles in companies. A number of people, what may be of interest is they have some sort of job experience and say, that's the last thing I want to do. So it could be a negative inflection point, or it could be something that is a gravitational pull in drawing you into where you are today.
Yeah, that's a good question. That could go a lot of different directions. So one of my inflection points started basically as soon as I started in the industry in 1993. I worked at a retail municipal bond firm, and it was almost like a trading floor setup, right? You didn't have offices, maybe 4 people had offices, but probably 50 of us on the floor. And number one, it was almost like a fraternity, a club. It was men and women, but it was such a great atmosphere. And we didn't have computers. You would literally walk up to the board, Mark, you probably remember this, and take down bonds off the screen. We weren't allowed to use headsets because the boss couldn't tell if you were on the phone or not. You had to use a handset, and they taped on my handset, you are unemployed between phone calls.
Wow.
So to this day,
That's pretty
right,
good.
29 years later, my philosophy,
I like
my mentality, is if I'm not on the phone, I'm not being productive.
Yeah.
So a phrase that Eric uses a lot, and I borrowed from him, is you can lead a horse to water, can't force him to drink. Or we say you can lead an advisor to the phone, but you can't force them to dial.
Oh, so true.
So my personal mantra and something we try to really talk to everyone about is you always have to be productive. It doesn't mean you have to be on the phone, but you always need to be productive versus a little bit of analysis paralysis. And that is ingrained in me just from that little piece of paper with tape over it on my handset a long time ago.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's funny. My phone mantra is 1,000 dials a day to guaranteed pay, which I never seem to get to 1,000 dials a day. But thank goodness Michael has got the phone glued to his ear with those. For me, I'd say I look back and I always remember there were certain things that people have said to me over the years as I was working in different jobs and doing different things and whatnot that kind of really, I think, helped form and pivot me to where I am. And there were two things which we use in most of our workshops today. One is we're always trying to better our best. And two is we're always striving for perfection, knowing we're never going to attain it. And as I was forming who I am today and the people that I was working with, one of my managers actually saw me because I used to really drive myself hard to the point of going for perfection every single time. And I finally had a manager come to me and says, you know what? It's okay to strive for it, but you're never going to get there because no one's perfect. And I took a step back with that and I said, you know what? That's an interesting way to think because we all want to try to be as perfect as we can. But the problem is we're all sometimes trying to be perfect and we can't. So when that manager said that to me, it made me pivot a little bit in my thinking and even how I work and how I talk to people. And even today with how we guide people from a coaching and consulting perspective, that we're not trying to make anybody perfect. We're trying to get them as close as we possibly can. And for a lot of people, that's different, right? The measurement of the stick is different. So for me, it was that manager really hitting home that perfection is not something we're ever going to attain, but it's okay to keep working in that direction. Another professional thing that I would say, this is another funny story, and this was called a precursor to the senior managing partner titles, and Michael and I both hold now.
Here we
partners.
go. Yeah.
And this goes to show you, I think, how people think. When we first started the company, we had our first workshop, and at the time it was called You Are What You Sell. And you roll back the tape, Mark, and you look at the stuff they did 15 years ago, and you look at it today, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe people listen to that. That's awful, right? Because that's the bettering the best, right? What we did 15 years ago, we thought was amazing. You look at it now, and you're like, oh my God, that was good. So we had an opportunity to do a workshop at a Smith Barney office, and we're dating ourselves for people that may remember Smith Barney, right? So we're all excited. Michael's excited. We're driving there. We go in. The manager comes running up, says, Michael Silva, great to see you. We're all set for the workshop today. We've been preparing everything. We put posters up, and we're like, posters. And there you see in the break area, a picture of Michael Silva like this. And it says, featured speaker today, Coach Mike.
And I'm not a Mike, I'm a Michael.
Right. Nothing about me, right? I'm like gone. I'm like nowhere to be seen anywhere. So he turns to me and says, oh, yeah, Eric, yeah, it's nice to meet you. So I'm like, okay, this is going to go terrific. This is going to go great, right? So we do the workshop. It's great. Manager comes up to Michael and says, Michael, that was great. It was awesome. I'm like, hello, here too. Did speaking. Is Michael, I got meetings set up for you with all the top advisors in the office. You can go sit with them. And then he turns to me and he goes, you can just walk around. I'm like, oh, great. This is wonderful. So I start walking down the hall and there's Michael sitting in the corner office with all the big muckety mucks, right? Laughing it up. I go into an office. I knock on the door. I say, hey, I saw you in the workshop. I wanted to see if you had any questions, anything I could help you out with. He goes, no. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the CEO, Coach Mike. I said, well, I'm the president. He goes, I want to talk to the CEO. I'm like, that's it. Right. I see Michael. Funny. I see Michael an hour later.
It wasn't funny in the moment.
Oh, no, it's funny now. Come on.
Yeah, totally.
I see Michael an hour later. He comes in and says, oh, wasn't that great? I didn't talk to him the whole ride home. I didn't say a word. Later that evening, he calls me up. I go over his house. We hug it out. And in that moment, he resigned as CEO. I
fired you
president.
first. I fired you.
That's it. Fired me. Fired me as president, and we changed our titling to senior managing partners.
That's awesome.
So to me, that was an inflection point of
It is.
So it just goes to show
Yeah.
what happens over the years.
And for the record, I told him I was co-presenting with my co-founder, but these people, just because I was the point of contact, were singular in nature. And I felt horrible. I knew it was messed up, but I could prove to Eric through emails that I said we're both presenting, and this manager just was not a good listener.
Singular and hierarchical in nature. It's
Right.
so funny.
Absolutely.
Really, that is an awesome inflection point, an awesome recognition on both of your parts. And I think of you, seriously, I've always thought of you as peers, partners, and
Merrick.
Merrick.
Let's do this and let's keep moving. Get us current. What inflection points took you to your current? Get us from Unibond commodities. I know that you were introduced at some point. It's a leap. It's one thing to be introduced to each other. It's one thing to become fast friends. How did you get the courage to start your own business and say, this is what we're doing?
It's a great question. Part of it was because I had a prior coach. Erica, you did too at one point.
Yep.
So we were used to that world. Yeah, we're like personal trainers for business. Everybody knows what to do, right? We're not bringing earth-shattering silver bullets. But if someone's standing over you at the gym and says, give me one more set, you're doing great, or move your arms just a little bit, you'll have better motion, you won't tweak your back, you're going to do better. We do the same thing. So having come from the industry, having worked with coaches, we saw a tremendous opportunity in the industry to bring what we do. And at the same time, the firms didn't have the resources. At one point, they wanted me to become a sales manager because people would come to me for ideas.
See that.
I didn't want to get into that realm, right? I like more the sales side and dealing with people and the challenge and the opportunity set. So we said, all right, we're going to launch a business. We had lots of connectivity, whether it's with advisors, with asset managers, with wealth management firms, all the different groups that Flex works with also. So we were able to tap into those networks and take a good reputation, really parlay it. And we started with an easy approach. We started talking to advisors we knew, managers we knew, and wrote a talk, just one talk, and started going out there to speak to groups of advisors. And now fast forward, we're 16 years in, and we have a team of coaches around the country, and we work with from trainees to our biggest team this year. We'll do 70 million in revenue. They're almost like a firm within a firm. We work with wirehouses, independents, regionals, RIAs, you name it. We get to the pleasure of working with these different types of practices. But one thing that stands out from that first talk and that first coaching client to really showing us and validating our work, we've had the pleasure many times of speaking at Barron's at their national teams conference. And the year pre-COVID, Eric and I did a presentation, which will be very similar to one of our upcoming webinars with Flex, whereby it wasn't main stage. It's such a big conference that there are very few main stage, but we had one of the largest breakout rooms. And it was, Eric, you'll remember this, standing room only. And during our talk, people were walking closer to take pictures of the slides. So obviously we couldn't lose that opportunity. We made a joke that it's $50 royalties for every picture.
No, I actually photobombed. I literally would jump in front of the slides.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But the fact that we're at Barron's, and there are lots of great resources, but Barron's is a great provider and conference. But the standing room only and people taking pictures and lined up to speak to us afterwards, we looked at each other. We're like, you almost get the chills. You're like, we have arrived. We have built something that we're so proud of, that people see the value. And that was really a current inflection point of look where we started and look where we are. And it's so fulfilling to see something like that happen.
Yeah, there's not much to add to that. I'll just add one kind of piece on top of it. When we met and we started working together, we knew we were onto something, right? And we knew that our different personalities, I always like to joke around that when we're at a table or making a pitch, sometimes Michael will virtually kick me under the table because he knows I'm going to go off in a direction. He's, oh God, where's Eric going now? But it ends up working. And I think that one of the things that, from when you talk about competitive forces and whatnot, we knew there were this competition out there, right? There's other people that do what we do. We always like to joke around that we don't have any competition because no one could do what we do, how we do it.
That's our mind.
There isn't. But one thing which I can say really was an inflection point that really turned it for us was when you look at a lot of the other folks out there that we were quote unquote competing against, they're all modular and they all have a book that they follow, or month 1, you do this, month 2, you do this, month 3, you do this. And we realized at our inflection point, that wasn't the way to go, because the problem with modular is it ends. It has an ending. And we didn't want that. We wanted to build a business and a company that would be around long after, and that people would be with us for years. We have clients that have been with us for 16 years. That's unheard of in a coaching and consulting relationship. But the reason it works is because we're not modular, right? We are really getting ingrained with the people that we work with and really becoming a part of their family, if you will. Our clients are our friends. So an inflection point for us was really realizing that modular is not the way to go. That if you want to build, if you look at what advisors are looking to do, advisors are looking to build long-term, sticky, Velcro-like relationships with their clients. You can't do that by being modular. So we said, why are we going to try to be something that we're not? We're advisors. This is how we think. So let's build our business around that mentality. And that's what created what we have today, where we have a business where clients don't leave. Just like with advisors, they're doing the same thing. They want to build a business where clients don't leave. So that was a little tipping point for us.
No, that's awesome. See, I think of you and Focus Partners as being not, I think of it as not being necessarily sequential, right? You're not slaves to a calendar, right? And to your point, it can be component based. People can pick the components that work for their practice. You're going to try and bring in the right advice and componentry to make them better. But it's not, back to your personal training thing. It's not this is the 4-week program to put on 10 pounds of muscle. Like
Exactly.
you're there for the long term. So I think
Exactly.
that's super insightful. Let's covered a lot of ground. I want to start to think ahead. What would you say are ongoing sources of inspiration and motivation that may compel you, maybe a catalyst to find new inflection points? And that could be, let's try and take this now outside the professional realm, or the things that you do outside of work that serve as inspiration inside of work.
Wow, that's a great question. We might need part 2 of this.
Give us a tease.
An inspiration outside of work that comes into work. So I have a son who had a very serious health issue over the last couple of years. And we don't need to go into detail about that. But the point is spending lots and lots of time in the hospital with him around healthcare workers. I have this unbelievably emotional, strong love of people, not only from the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, but also from the community that surrounded our family to help us through this challenging time. And luckily we're on the other side of it, but there are such good people out there. And I think I have a newfound love of this goodness of people, from the bad you hear out there, that every day Eric and I meet new people professionally versus personally. And they're just awesome people out there, awesome advisors. And all of these people want to go from good to great. We come in once in a while, but normally we don't come in to fix something that's broken. We come in to find something good and polish it up and make it even better. So I think that kind of personal and professional inflection point is there's such great people out there and we just want to help them however we can.
That's super cool. I've seen Michael, definitely another show. We've got some kind of shared experiences and insights. And I agree in the healthcare space, the amount of caring, the amount of energy, the amount of authenticity that they can bring to a super challenging job every day makes what the three of us do. Like they can do
minor.
Yeah, we can do it. No pressure, Eric. You have one for us?
Hey, mine's a little bit more selfish. No, so I love to be outdoors, right? And I'm 55 years old and I don't feel 55, although sometimes in the morning when I wake up, I feel a little 55. I like to think we don't look 55. And one of my passions is mountain biking. And I've always been able to hit the woods, go up these huge inclines, rocks, boulders, the whole bit.
That's an electric bike.
I'm just kidding. No, we're getting there. That's part of it here, but that's the piece, right? So I used to have what I would say the normal bike, and I was getting to the point where I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up with the group anymore, and I started to get down on myself, and I started to be like, I really can't know if I can do this anymore. I'm going to have to start doing road biking, like my partner Michael, on flat pavement where it's easy, what all those folks do. And I was talking to my dad, and my dad's about 85. And no one realizes my dad's 85 because my folks still go out to the city. They go out to bars. They go to happy hours. It's great. And my dad said to me, he said, why do you have to stop what you love to do? I said, I'm having trouble doing it. He goes, find a way to still enjoy what you do without having to give it up. I'm like, I don't know what you mean. He goes, look at me. He goes, I love golf. He said, when I started in golf, he said, I was using a steel shaft because I was younger. He goes, then I got older and I went to graphite. He goes, and now I'm using this like senior shafts, which allows me to get the same distance that I was getting when I was younger. He's like, better living through technology. He says, so I could still do what I love to do, still keep up with all the young guys. And why don't you try to do that? So I did research into Michael's point. I found an electric mountain bike and I'm like, here we go. This is great. So invested, bought the electric mountain bike. And I was like, this was like that inflection point to be like, you know what? I can still do what I love to do. I can still get out there, enjoy it. Now I actually blow ahead of the 30-year-olds because I have an electric mountain bike. So it's not a moped. You still have to pedal, right? It just gives you a little bit of extra help, right? And I think that's something I try to take to the engagements and to the relationships that we have, right? That you can find ways to keep growing your business. You can keep finding ways to service your clients better, to keep growing in whatever it is you're doing and whatever it is you're looking to do. Sometimes you might have to find something to help you do it, right? A piece of technology, right? Or help from a coach or whatever it might be. But there are things you can find that can inspire you or motivate you to keep allowing you to do what you love to do.
I think that's a great insight, a great inflection point. You're getting all the benefits of being out in the woods, out in nature, out with friends, and you've adjusted to make that possible. I think that's a number of people would approach it the way you did initially, in a binary way. I can do this or I can't. Thanks to your dad, like you get that reframing, which I think is an important. Let me reframe this. How do I reframe this in a way that works for me? So that's awesome. Michael,
Yes, sir.
1 minute, you mentioned doing another episode. That's a definite. Why don't you give us a 1 minute tease on the way where our companies are working together?
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that opportunity. So as I see it, and correct us if we're wrong here, Flex works with three different kind of verticals of opportunities, right? You have advisors, you have wealth management firms, and you have asset management firms.
Absolutely.
The work we do can help all three areas. So as we talk more and more together with your community, the Flex community, we're going to talk about ways we provide value can actually help those different groups. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. We'll get very specific, very tactical, with best practices, ideas that are appropriate for all areas. I guess that's how I'd put it.
Super impromptu, super succinct, and that's why we're working together. Excellent. Good. As we wrap up here, one more thing. Thank you to Michael. Thank you to Eric, and a big thank you to our listeners for your time, allowing us to occupy. And I think we've achieved it today. Potentially enhance your mind space. Both are valuable. Both are valuable. We are a work in progress as people and a podcast. If you picked up anything of interest, please subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. And until next time, keep looking for and creating your own inflection points. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you soon.
The information contained in this recording is provided as is for educational and informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. FLX Networks makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer, listener, or other third party. Neither FLX Networks nor any of its affiliates make any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this recording should be construed as investment advice. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate companies before investing.